The story of Job is found in the book that bears his name in the Hebrew Bible and is part of the wisdom literature along with Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. The story is set in an undefined time, in a region known as Uz, but the message of the story is timeless, applying to human circumstances of all times. Job is described as a perfect and upright, God-fearing and shunning evil man. He is a prosperous man, with a large family and many possessions. His children enjoy feasting, and life is good for Job and his family. However, the story changes tone when the adversary, known as Satan, enters the picture. In heaven, God has a conversation with Satan, and praises Job's righteousness. Satan, however, challenges the motivation of Job's piety, suggesting that Job is faithful because he has been blessed with prosperity and an easy life. Satan challenges God, touch all that he has, and see if he does not blaspheme you in your very presence. God, confident in Job's faith and loyalty, accepts the challenge, allowing Satan to destroy all of Job's possessions and ultimately his body, but not allow him to die. What follows is a sequence of disasters that befall Job. In a single day, he loses his servants, his livestock, his property, and, most painful of all, his children, who die when a great storm collapses the house where they were holding a banquet. Despite this overwhelming pain, Job does not curse God. Instead, he utters one of the book's most engraved statements: "Naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked I will return there. The Lord gave and the Lord took away, may the name of the Lord be blessed." Satan, seeing that Job is still faithful, poses a second test, this time directly affecting Job's health. God, again trusting in Job's loyalty, allows Satan to hurt him essentially, covering him with painful sores from head to toe. Job suffers greatly, scraping his sores with a piece of pottery as he sits in ashes, an image that symbolizes the depth of his despair. Despite extreme grief and loss, Job refuses to curse God. His wife, distressed by her husband's suffering, tells him to curse God and die, but Job replies, "Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" This passage reveals one of the central themes of the book. Suffering is not always a punishment for sin, and devotion to God should not depend on circumstances. At this point, three of Job's friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, arrive to comfort him. At first, he shows compassion, sitting quietly with Job for 7 days and 7 nights, not uttering a word because of the magnitude of his pain. This act of silent solidarity is a poignant image of human empathy. After this period of silence, Job begins to speak, expressing his bitterness and confusion. He curses the day he was born and wonders why the lives of the innocent must be so painful. Why is light given to the man who is in bitterness of soul, and life to those who are in bitterness of soul? Job 3 verse 20. Her lament expresses a deep existential despair, a desire to understand the purpose of her suffering. Job's friends respond with a series of speeches that reflect their belief in retributive justice, the idea that suffering is the result of sin and that Job must have done something wrong to deserve such punishment. Eliphaz, for example, suggests to him that no man is completely righteous before God and that, therefore, Job must repent of some hidden sin. Bildad and Zophar also defend this idea, though more severely, urging Job to confess his transgressions and seek God's forgiveness. Job, however, insists on his innocence. Throughout several chapters, he maintains his integrity and rejects the accusations of his friends. While acknowledging that he is imperfect like any human being, he affirms that he has not committed any sin that is worthy of the level of suffering he has experienced. Job is baffled by the apparent injustice of his situation, and begins to question God's system of justice. At one point he declares, "I cry to you, but you do not answer me. I introduce myself, and you don't attend to me." Job, as the story progresses, enters into a deep theological reflection. He wonders why the wicked thrive while the righteous suffer, and asks for an audience with God to understand the reason for their pain. His desire for an explanation becomes a central issue. He wants to confront God directly and hear from him the reason for his situation. At this point, a fourth character, Elihu, appears on the scene. Unlike Job's other friends, Elihu is younger and presents himself as someone who wants to offer a different perspective. He argues that suffering can serve a corrective or disciplinary purpose, not necessarily as punishment, but as a way for people to grow closer to God and understand his limitations. Although his speech is more moderate than that of the other friends, he also fails to offer a definitive answer to the question of suffering. Eventually, God responds to Job, but not in the way he expected. From a whirlwind, God speaks and begins to ask Job questions about the mysteries of creation. He asks if he, Job, was the one who laid the foundations of the earth, or if he has the power to control natural phenomena. This divine discourse is one of the most impressive moments in the narrative. God does not offer a direct explanation for Job's suffering, but shows him the vastness and complexity of the universe, highlighting that there are aspects of life and creation that are beyond human comprehension. God's response underlines the smallness of man in the face of the greatness of the divine. Through this discourse, God not only reinforces his sovereignty, but also reveals that not all human questions can be answered in terms we can understand. Job, faced with this revelation, realizes its insignificance and humbly replies, "Therefore I hate myself and repent in dust and ashes." After this encounter with God, the story takes a final turn. God rebukes Job's friends for not speaking correctly about him and commands them to offer sacrifices, while Job prays for them. As a result, God restored Job's fortune, giving him twice as much as he had lost. In addition, Job has other children, and his life is once again full of blessings. The happy ending of the story does not minimize the pain Job experienced, but it does suggest that faithfulness, even in the midst of the most incomprehensible suffering, can result in restoration. However, the central message of the book is not simply that God rewards loyalty with material blessings, but that suffering is a mystery that often escapes human understanding, and that true faith does not depend on external circumstances.